Well, hello and welcome back everyone to my review of the second season of The Umbrella Academy. Now this season, with a lot of deviations actually, does follow to a great extent, to a decent extent at least, in the footsteps of Dallas, the second comic book arc for The Umbrella Academy. It's a 7-issue arc, it's a really fun arc to read, but the series kind of put their own twist on it, and that's what we're going to discuss here. Where are the Easter eggs out of the comic book? What does that ending have to do with the comic book? Because in the end, we've got a similar ending, not to the Dallas arc, but to the Hotel Oblivion arc, the third arc of the comic book. And considering Hotel Oblivion is the last of the 3 arcs published so far, there's a 4th upcoming, but this is the last that we have read. We're venturing into uncharted territory. The only thing I can tell you is they're gonna take a lot of inspiration on the next season out of the Hotel Oblivion arc, but the ending has already been set in advance. There are other stuff as well that they pulled out of that arc, like for example the recuperation of Vanya. But okay, all of that and more will be discussed on this video, in which we're gonna kind of break down this season, not in full because 10 episodes, 1 video, that's gonna be too much. But we're gonna break it down in the best and briefest way possible, and then we're gonna discuss that ending. The possibilities for Season 3 are endless. We're gonna talk about that on a separate video, but let's for the time being focus on Season 2. Okay, so the first thing right off the bat over here is a reminder of how the first season ended, because it ended with a bullet shot next to Vanya's ears. That's what sort of put her down for a bit. However, though, that burning chunk of moon still hit Earth, still caused the apocalypse, as opposed to what happened in the comic books, because the entire apocalypse was averted. The other major difference is at the end of Apocalypse Suite, the first arc of the comic book, the one the first season was based on, there was always a bullet heading for Vanya, except in the comic book, it was headed for her head, and not just to pass next to her ear. So yeah, by the beginning of the second arc of the comic book, Vanya is incapacitated, she's in a hospital bed, and she's suffering memory loss, something that, because of the change to the first season, had its cause changed on the second season from its comic book counterpart. You know, that accident she had being run over as soon as she landed in 1963. Now, another thing that I've always forgotten to mention on the first season of the series when reviewing it is that was still Easter egged. You know, the handler getting shot in the head. That was basically an Easter egg to Vanya on the pages of the comics getting shot in the head at the end of Apocalypse Suite. The handler is a character that never existed in the comic books either. Now, as we see on the premiere, all the members of the Umbrella Academy, the entire team up, all these siblings ended up being separated, being dropped at different points in times, all in the early 1960s, with the only drop point that mattered being the one that number 5 got dropped into. You know, coming to realize that another apocalypse is at hand. So while they're trying to avoid the apocalypse from 2019, trying to stop what does happen in their very own future, they end up having to deal with double trouble, you know, a crisis within a crisis, an apocalypse within an apocalypse. So let's sort out the one that's coming soon first, and then think about the other one, even though the other one kind of sorts itself out because of all the changes that they caused to the timeline. But does it really? Okay, gonna get back to that in a little bit here. Now, there are some notable moments on the season out of the comic books, a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of parallels, all of it so beautiful, so well done. I mean, my only complaint about the first season and the second season so far is really all about Ellen Page. I'm not a big fan. Her acting to me never really felt all that great, never felt convincing either, even though her storyline is really well written. I mean, I hope the actress would have been different, but hey, they're stuck with Ellen Page for Vanya for the rest of the series, so we're gonna have to make our peace with it. Now, one major departure over here is the fact that Hazel and Cha-Cha are absent from the scene, because on the pages of the comics, they were actually introduced during the events of Dallas, but we do get to see Hazel for a moment at the very beginning of the season. He's acting in place of Carmichael, kind of trying to give a certain mission to none other than number 5. But okay though, let's talk that very scene with the nuke, you know, when he realizes that something shitty is going down. Number 5, that is. Now, the first thing that we notice out of that scene is Vanya is back to full power. She's remembered her powers, she knows everything, she knows how to do things as opposed to the comic books. At that point as well, we do not know that the series has done the memory loss thing, but they do it in the end, and they do give her back her memories, which she does get back, by the way, on the pages of the comics, only closer to the ending of Dallas or the beginning of Hotel Oblivion. Don't remember exactly, but right around that period of time. Now, as opposed to Ben kind of helping her through all of this, getting her through it, her remembering on her own due to torture, and then due to the help of Ben, she does remember on the pages of the comics with the help of Allison. Allison is there by her side. Allison helps her get through it. Even though she's the one that slit her throat, she still helps her get through it. Because Allison as well on the pages of the comics does get her voice back, and we do see that right off the bat on the series as well. Now, on the pages of the comics, the Temps Aeternalis, aka the commission on the series, are the ones that give her voice back. We get to realize over there that number 5 and Luther are actually children to the same mother. They're actually twins. We get to realize that when Carmichael hires number 5, the younger version of number 5, to chase down his older version. He's not really the younger version, you know what I mean here, but he's trying on the pages of the comics to send him on a mission to chase down his older yet younger self in order to make sure that he does not stop all the Temps/agents from killing JFK, because that would be messy for the timeline. The thing about killing JFK is it is what stops the apocalypse. So as number 5 and Rumor start rejecting the idea, especially number 5 here, Carmichael makes it clear he's not just threatening number 5 over here, he's also threatening that other brother that was born with him on the same day. He's threatening Luther. And that is the turning point for them. Like, okay, I'm gonna work with you and everything. They take her, they put her under the knife on the operating table, and they fix her voice. And that's how she gets it back, really. But let's not forget though that the nukes that we see right off the bat, these nukes are also references to the nuke codes handed over on the pages of the comics by JFK to Reginald Hargreeves. Like on the very first few pages of the first comic in this volume, they're handed over to him. But okay, on the first episode we've got Diego in a mental institution. He's the first one that number 5 finds. We've got a quick yet really solid pop culture reference right there. Why don't you tell that to Luke Skywalker? But it's also followed by, I know you don't get it, but that's an excellent reference, which it is indeed an excellent reference, and also a reference at a time, before its time. Now the next one we meet out of the lost siblings is Vanya. Vanya is kind of a babysitter, but she's really being taken care of by this family because the wife did drive her over. The bit with Allison and Dre, her husband, about the moon in the book with the moon, the way Allison looks at the book, the way Allison is taken by the idea, that's all about what happened on season 1, the ending, the moon destruction, and that piece of the moon falling on Earth, destroying the planet. And it also refers to the fact that there are certain emotions there between her and Luther, because in the end he was Spaceboy on the pages of the comics as well. He was defined on the first pages of Apocalypse Suite as the first boy to go to the moon. Now it is true that Hazel and Cha-Cha are not there on this season, but instead there are the 3 Swedes, the 3 agents of the Temps Aeternalis sent after number 5 and his siblings. In the middle of all of this, there is the surprise that their dad is around for all of this. Like, yeah, he is involved. We expected that. We do know the thing about the codes and the nukes out of the comics and his involvement with JFK. Now, a little bit over a year ago, I did state that they're gonna find a way to bring Pogo back. I mean, that's part of the Dallas arc. However, though, they kind of did it completely differently, because the events of the first season of the series happens in 2019, while the events of the first comic book arc does happen in the 80s. So the kids have been born around that time, or are born a few months later. The other thing about all of this is there's the involvement of one Inspector Lupo. So sad he did not make an appearance on this season. He's kind of like a Jim Gordon type character, like, the glasses, the raincoat, the whole 9 yards really, even the haircut, and finally the demeanor. So he's kind of missed on the series, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna add him later, at some point later on down the road. But at the very least though, we got to see the real Grace. We got to see them with Pogo as a family, like they're treating Pogo as their own child. Now another thing to mention over here is that Reginald Hargreeves' role on the pages of Dallas is very limited, as opposed to his role on this season. I gotta say I love the whole thing about the cult that Klaus started. Not the cult itself, but the fact that he's so silly, he ends up calling them Destiny's Children, like a play on Destiny's Child. That totally fits with Klaus's character. He's silly, he's not that creative, he's just winging it all the way through. Circling back though to the extended involvement of Reginald Hargreeves on this season, as opposed to the comic book counterpart, it's really interesting how they did this entire Majestic 12 thing. Every single comic book and every single comic book TV series does have its own take on historical events, like they repurpose it, they change it, make it in a way that fits the story, and the Majestic 12 in this case, they're not just the talk of conspiracy theorists, they do exist. The Majestic 12 in real life is basically the UFO conspiracy theorists agency for everything UFO and spacecraft related. But okay though, let's leave Reginald and the Majestic 12 behind. We're gonna circle back to them when we get to the assassination of Kennedy and the truth about Reginald Hargreeves on the series. Okay, so the handler tricks number 5 into killing the board of the commission for her, including AJ Carmichael. Carmichael is a character I didn't expect to see on the series. I've always thought, and especially with the first season's events, that Kate Walsh's character, the handler, is basically a fill-in for Carmichael. However though, I was surprised to see him, like that dude from the comics, except in the comics he's a little bit more robotic, but still one with a goldfish for a head and a brain. Now, the idea of killing that board in that room is kind of a reference to this entire story of Perseus on the pages of the comics. Perseus has not been introduced on the series so far, so we're gonna leave him for later. However though, in the comics, number 5 did it for himself, did it as some kind of vengeance, killing Carmichael, not the entire board. And while he did not swallow the goldfish on the series the way he did on the pages of the comics, Kate Walsh, aka the Handler, did it for him, like close to the end, as some kind of final bit of vengeance against Carmichael. But yeah though, all of that kind of defined the Handler as a villain, because the next thing we've got here is the introduction of Lila. Lila is introduced as this crazy person in the mental institution that Diego is held in at the beginning of the season. However though, she's actually daughter to none other than the Handler. Not a biological daughter, but someone whose parents she killed along with number 5 faked the kill order in order to get to her, in order to have a weapon of her own. Now the thing about Lila as well is this kind of addresses the situation with the 43 babies born at the same time, on the same day, the same moment actually, a moment before which their mothers weren't really pregnant. That's by the way what Carmichael threatens on the pages of the comics. He's gonna kill number 5's mother, and in essence kill Luther's mother. But yeah though, we're slowly addressing that bit. Harlan has got abilities as well, but they're not really abilities that he got because of the same situation of the others. It is basically Vanya that passed her powers to him when she was trying to resuscitate him, and succeeded by the way, when the kid almost drowned. But I do love it when one series based on the material from a comic book publisher references the material from another comic book publisher. In this case it was DC Comics that was referenced 2 times over the course of this season. The first was when number 5 tried to explain what Diego is like to Elliot, think Batman, and then aim lower. And then the other one was when Ray pretty much referenced Wonder Woman, referring to Allison as Wonder Woman actually, only she cannot prove that she's got powers. One among many changes though over here, one of the major departures from the comic book, is that Vanya would have been the cause of all of it. Vanya was in her bed suffering, was the cause of nothing over the course of the second comic book volume. So yeah, that's a major departure over here. But it is the pain that she feels from past and present. It is the same trigger, the same intensity, only a different day. One of the most emotional moments on this season happens to be that of Ben with Vanya. Like Ben went all horror on the first season. That's the name of his character in the comics, The Horror. But he went all horror on the first season in order to stop Vanya. And now all he had to do was possess Vanya, go into her mind and start talking to her, get her out of that place that she's cornered herself in because of all her troubles. But circling back to Harlan though and his abilities, that kid in trouble trope, that's pretty much a reference to the comic book situation with Baby Luther. Baby Luther is being threatened by none other than Carmichael. But we get though to the point of JFK's assassination. Diego couldn't stop it, no one could actually stop it. The one thing here is, Reginald Hargreeves wasn't responsible for it. I mean, this series kind of tried to mislead us in that direction. I expected that was not going to be the case because I read the comics, but then the twist was kind of different. It was all about the Majestic 12. The situation really on the pages of the comics is about the Temps Aeternalis, the threat to Luther's life does have an unlikely person be the one to kill JFK. She does actually rumor JFK into his own death, averting the crisis, averting the apocalypse, and making sure the mission assigned by none other than Carmichael is completed. It's right after that, at the end of that volume, the Dallas volume, that Carmichael gets killed at the hands of number 5. But speaking of that alien Easter egg though, Reginald Hargreeves is an alien. That's basically the message that the series was trying to send us, when he removed his mask and then went all crazy, killing the rest of the members of the Majestic 12. However, though, there are multiple things that I could think of over here. Number 1 is the Televator and Hotel Oblivion, because that's pretty much located in after space. It's kind of like a prison that he sent all the criminals that he and the Umbrella Academy members captured to. However, though, it's not exactly a prison, but that's a story for a different time. But it does, though, bring up the idea of Reginald Hargreeves possibly being an alien. Just possibly being an alien. Like, how did he get there? How did he realize how to get there, build that Televator, and create that prison? And number 2, there is that moment where Klaus is pretty much under the influence and overdosing as well, and he sees Hargreeves like hazy images, and one of them actually looks a little bit alien-ish. 2 things though that we need to discuss before we move on to the ending of the season. The first of which is, while we might not have really witnessed a version of Grace on the pages of the comics, a real version of Grace, we did read about someone that Reginald Hargreeves had feelings for in the past on the pages of Hotel Oblivion, so this could be inspired by that. And there's the second thing. The second thing is all about that army of agents summoned by the Handler close to the end of the season. Now that army of agents slash drones slash temps is pretty much representative of that army of drones that number 5 does fight early on in the events of the Dallas volume. But those, though, they were our top moments for this season, Easter eggs, everything that's parallel and not parallel to the comics. But there's one thing, though, that we still need to finish this video off with, which is basically the Sparrow Academy, that ending, those other 7 individuals that are basically number 1 through 7, the Space Boy through the horror. Now, on the pages of Hotel Oblivion, Vanya is going through this arc with her mother, an arc of self-discovery or rediscovery, an arc of getting better and improving. I didn't miss that little bit at the beginning of this video. Like I mentioned, it was just Allison that was trying to help her, but there was also Mother or Grace on the issues of Hotel Oblivion. Now, the thing about this journey is that by the end of this journey, or close to the end of this journey, I think it was the 6th out of 7 issues that compose Hotel Oblivion, she does meet with this person, this Carla person, and Carla basically tells her that she's gonna take her to meet up with their family. Now, the thing about Carla, about that team up out of which one person identifies himself on the final page of this arc of the comic book as number 1, is she never names it. She never mentions a Sparrow Academy. However, though, there is a Sparrow Academy probably on the pages of the comics, because the first time she meets up with Vanya, she's dressed in this uniform, and it does have this bird logo on it, and it does look like possibly a sparrow. So yeah, there is a Sparrow Academy. It is something that is going to be addressed on the next comic book arc. However, though that comic book arc is not released yet, probably as well due to the pandemic, not sure when it was supposed to release, but I believe it was about this time in the year, like earlier than now actually, and by now we would have had a few issues out of it. So yeah, we're a little bit behind on that one. But there's also Mr. Calhoun who appears at the end of that issue, at the end of that last issue of Hotel Oblivion, and he's basically talking to this assistant of his, and he's named Lester. There's the news on the TV about this other group of vigilantes out there that's trying to help with a certain situation. It's the entire situation that resulted from the events of Hotel Oblivion, and this Calhoun guy is basically asking his assistant to get him someone on the phone from the State Department. We need to talk about these weirdos running around. Now, this guy has never been introduced before now on the pages of the comics, so we don't really know who he is. However, though, something about him, something about the way he looks, does give away Reginald Hargreeves vibes, so he might as well be alive on the pages of the comics. But to explain this ending though, these guys have changed so much of the timeline, things have changed for them in the future. It is as simple as that. However, though, there might be a twist to all of it, just like there was a twist with the Sparrow Academy. I mean, time travel wasn't really all that much involved in the events of Hotel Oblivion, if I remember correctly, if at all actually. And yet we had those kids out of the Sparrow Academy. I'm assuming right now, based on what we watched on the series, that that's the Sparrow Academy. So yeah, it is possible that some bigger twist is at play over here. We're gonna realize that come season 3. That said though, there is not really much to predict about the next season except for some parts of the story of Hotel Oblivion, because another part, like the Vanya part for example, that's all been sorted out on this season, and in a briefer manner, a completely different manner as well. So yeah, I may or may not post my Season 3 predictions video. I will probably in the end, but maybe not very soon. It is possibly going to be after they release the first issue or couple of issues out of the next arc of the comic book. I might as well then review that arc or those few issues out of that arc in the process. Let me know in the comments down below though what you thought of this season, what you expect out of the next season, and let me know if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, thank you so much for tuning in to this one. Stay safe and have a great day.